Hi, welcome to the Broadcaster's Desktop Resource. We are glad you're here, and we hope you enjoy the program. If you do, please, down in the lower right corner, it says subscribe, and we sure hope you'll do that. It'll allow you to find us more easily, and you can even set it up to alert you when new videos are posted. But there's more. Let me show you. Here's the front page, and under news, and the lunch gathering, you will find several important things, including here is the link request to get an invite to the Zoom live presentation on Thursday afternoons on the East Coast and the morning here in the West. We have the upcoming presentations. You can see what we have lined up for you. And we also have the library of our previous presentations, the most recent ones here, and then, of course, all the other categories. There's about 200 of them. In fact, you'll find something of interest, I'm sure. So, enjoyed the video? We'll see you later. Our goal today is to talk about backups, and Jeff Welton, as always, is our head of the month guest and presenter and friend and all kinds of good things. And so we want to talk not just about equipment backups, we want to talk about personal backup as well. And Jeff, where do you want to start?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, the big thing is, and of course, it's like I say, anytime I do safety or IT security or any of those talks, um, anytime I'm talking to anybody, they're already doing all the things I'm talking about, or they wouldn't be attending the session. So, this is kind of preaching to the choir. But just the interfacing, the building the network, so you've got somebody to cover your assets if you need to take a day off, whether it's a planned holiday or as we get older and older, some medical reason.
Yeah, I did an article a couple years ago, more than a couple years ago, about what happens to all your passwords and your social media things if you pass away.
Well, that's a huge one. Remember that guy? I want to say he was up here somewhere, and up here could be anywhere between here and Vancouver, which is only a 6,500 mile range. But the guy that passed away and his Bitcoin password died with him.
Hmm?
And so several hundred thousands of Bitcoin just vanished into the ether. I mean, yeah, that's one of those like, and I'll give you one example. I mean, it's no secret what I think about the iPhone, but whether you like iPhones or Androids, my wife and I both have Androids. We both have biometrics turned on, but we also both have the little squiggly line passcode set up, and we each know the other's passcode. So if one of us, has an unforeseen accident, the other one can get into the first person's device to access passwords or anything that they've got that I don't have, for example. So yeah, that'd be passwords are huge. It's something we don't think about in this industry enough.
Passwords, keys,
Password is a key when you get right down to it. So yeah, same thing.
you know.
And like my station, one of the things we've started using for both, well, the site, we've got one key ring, but the keys are kept in a real estate agent lockbox at the on the door of the studio. So everybody who's on air or everybody who needs access has the code to the lockbox. They open the lockbox, get the keys to let themselves into the building, and then lock it up when they're done. The reason for that is that way when somebody leaves, we don't have to reprogram all the keys. We just change the code on the lockbox.
That's been a major improvement in the last few years. And now, of course, with the cell phones, some of them you can actually walk up and tap the lock or set it remotely. Harold, what's up?
One of the organizations I'm in, a person talked about the organization's bus number as to how many people could be hit by a bus and still have the organization survive. So that's, users and passwords to access equipment. Should be more than one.
Right. Yeah, and beyond that, it goes to the whole succession plan concept. I mean, and we got to see a terrible example of it with BW Broadcast a few years ago, when Roger and Scott both passed within about a year of each other, and the company just went into limbo. Because you think of one person passing away, what do we do? But what happens if they both go? And that's a great point. Like, if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, well, it'd be a freaking miracle because there's not a bus within 100 miles of me. But and school's out, so I wouldn't even be a school bus. But if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, I mean, IT would have access to all my email immediately, and somebody else smarter and better looking would be on the job probably the day after tomorrow.
Dennis says that by using these locks that are digital, uh, if each employee has their own code, first of all, you know who's been where and when, but also when they leave, you don't have to worry about chasing down the keys. I was talking to a company this week that is going to have, I guess, a special deal during Amazon Prime Week next week. They make digital locks, and they're coming out with a set of cameras as well. And I thought a couple of features with the locks were pretty interesting. One is that you set your code, but then you can enter, because sometimes people watch you. You can enter as many numbers as you want, and as long as your code is in there, it'll open. So if, let's say, your code is 1234, and you enter 56682412344495, it'll open. Pretty intelligent lock.
And I guess for anything that requires like a physical key touch and isn't online accessible, that's fine. But the ability of somebody to hit a random sequence that contains your sequence, at that point, they don't just have to guess. They don't have to figure out your code. They just have to have it appear in some sequence of numbers. I'd be interested to do the math and see if that's less or more secure from an IT perspective.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't know the answer. I'm just kind of curious. It's like, well, if my number's 1234 and somebody hits 11234 or 12344, both of those would get them in. So are the odds of them getting those two numbers higher or lower than,
Well, first of all, you should never do that. But
yeah, 1234 is not a password any more than password is.
Yep, exactly, Harold.
Yeah, I think an important feature on a lot of stuff is to block based upon failed login attempts. I run fail to ban on my server, and I've got several thousand IP addresses currently blocked. But on a building lock, you could say, okay, every time there's a failure, I'll double the timeout, and they're going to have to be waiting hours before another code will be accepted.
Yeah. Well, Nortel does that with their AUI, don't they?
No, we do not. No, you can hit that as many.
Well, I've made a mistake on that VS300, and after the third one, it says you have to wait 5 minutes.
On a VS, you can only have X number of people logged in or attempting to log in at a time, and it will only handle 3. So, and it takes it 5 seconds to auto recycle. So yeah, that would make sense. But it wasn't. What do you call it? It's an unintended consequence. It wasn't a planned part of the software.
Okay.
Now, on the VX, where it's got 3 times the processor and half of the actual payload on it, you can hit that thing over and over and over and over again, and it'll just sit there going, huh, nope, that's not it. Nope, that's not it.
I don't know exactly how many digits this lock will allow at one time,
Right.
I'm looking to find out that information. So
Well, and I mean the risk factor to you can go and I say almost draconian with it. And our IT department, because of some of the other stuff we do, they take a very, very strict approach to it. They have to. And like on this guy on the iPhone, I have a three strikes and you're out policy. So if you enter your passcode wrong three times, it wipes the phone. And I know this because it's happened to me in the field. Um, and I would feel bad about it, except apparently I'm not the only one it's happened to. So at least I'm not alone.
well, I
But
used
the
to
challenge to that is like, and where Rose, I was going to get on an airplane and get going to get the boarding pass, and it said, "Hey, it's time to enter your new passcode." And you've got to do this right now before you can do anything else. There's no grace period. And so I enter a passcode and I'm in a hurry. I'm standing in line trying to get the boarding pass. So then it asked me to confirm, and I magically hit the same, whatever it was that I hit the first time, I got it right again. Then I get to the other end, and about 2, 3 days later, it says, okay, you just changed your passcode. Let's see you enter it again. And I did, and it goes, nope, that's not right. And I said, oh, I must have typed that wrong. So I did it slowly and carefully, and it said, nope, that's not right. And it's like, oh, I wonder if I did this. And I did it slowly and carefully again, and it said, nope, that's not right. Goodbye, and erased itself. So yeah, I mean, what do they say? The most secure system is the one that nobody can get into. It's a
yeah.
fine line between
Well,
security and access.
the
On
convenience,
the
of course, has the back end to it. In the old days, you'd have, I mean, I used to have one key that would open the transmitter door and all the tower base boxes and gates. Just one key. That's all we needed. Uh,
Mhm.
on the other hand, with AI now, you can also have these things open at certain times, and part of this backup, Lark just put a pop up here in the chat box, which
Yes,
makes
I
a lot
was
of
going to hit
sense.
that.
Go ahead.
No, I'd say that's a really, really good point. That if somebody comes knocking, and I mean especially for an interference issue, then if you're not around there, it better be somebody on the list.
Yeah, and you better be able to find them. I
Yep.
just, one of the things that a lot of folks don't know, and that is, since there's no main studio requirement anymore, where's the control point? Where do you post your chief operator certificate, or where do you keep your station log?
Hey Barry,
Yes, sir.
you know what the difference is between a pirate radio station and a licensed station? The pirate radio station is much easier to find.
No doubt.
In a lot of cases, that's exactly true. Um, and to get into or to find somebody there, uh,
Yep.
all too often you get to a site, and if you can find it, it may be locked up and nobody's around with a key.
And I may or may not have run into that before the main studio rule went away once or twice. So yeah, and I saw
And
Mark was mentioning about the master locks, and yeah,
yeah.
lockpick and lawyer is awesome. One of the ones I use, my whole house is keyed with Quickset,
Mhm.
and I like the Quickset keys because you can buy the keys like a blank. It's just a already keyed. It's not a blank. It's already got the grooves in it, and then you use the little access tool to program your lock to accept that key. The advantage to it is I've got about 4 different key patterns in the house right now. All the locks are keyed to one of them, but if I need to have like a maintenance guy come in when we're not going to be home, I can key one lock to a specific key, give him that key, and then when he leaves, I rekey that lock to the original and throw the blanks away for his, so I don't accidentally do it again.
Now, Jeff, since you showed us that key, we've
Yeah,
all got a screenshot of it, and well, you know the rest.
you notice, Lark, when I held it up there, I was also holding my finger in front of the key pattern.
It's
yeah.
amazing what you can do today.
As
Yep.
long as we have Lark here, I'm going to mention more than just having the known backup engineer and being at the right location. You want to have all the data. If you're out of town on a holiday, as they say in England or Canada, or a vacation, as we say, um, and your standby gets called, will he have access to the important information, model numbers, serial numbers, access numbers for the internet connection, uh, the electric box? Where are these things?
I mean, shoot, who's your contract with for HVAC or
Mhm.
all that stuff? Yeah, who do you call?
It
You know,
is really important. Put a booklet together, in fact, of all
Well,
this key information.
we have a printed old school binder with all that
Mhm.
type of stuff in there that's well indexed, no computer needed.
Yep.
And that,
Well,
of course, that binder is normally locked up, but four people can get to it.
Yeah,
So
we've got
now,
a whiteboard in the studio that says, if this, call this person, if this, call this person, and a list of names and
sure.
numbers. So same deal. Yeah.
Now,
But
one of the
renewing
important
that,
things to remember, go ahead, Lark.
I was going to say, what we run into is that data may be available, but may be very old. And it's with turnover, cutbacks, people getting older and forgetting. There's a lot of us who I didn't write that down because I'll tell them. And under the pressure of the moment, you're like, oh gosh, what was that number?
But today
No,
I had a couple of young fellas out looking at the gas tanks in the back of the house because I want to move them and build a deck where they're located so I can sit there in the evening, watch the sunset over the ocean and drink my coffee. And it's my retirement deck. It's coming, but it's going to be a ways away yet.
let's go back to
Anyway,
the
so
transmitter building here because
yeah,
uh, we don't want to miss this here, especially since we have someone who's got to double check me if I say something wrong, and that is we just finished the second quarter. Each quarter, you're supposed to do a tower lighting system inspection. Where does it go? You don't log it into your online public information file. Where does it go? Each quarter. And that's just not to say that your lights are going on and off. You're supposed to check the system and put it in your maintenance log. Now, again, we come back to this point about control point. Every station should have a control point. As I understand it, if it is not your studio or your office, you need to put it into the FCC records where the control point is. Somebody says, well, the control point is my cell phone. I don't think that passes muster. And I'm not being corrected, so I may be right.
Well, one comment, I'm going to try to be very careful here.
Yes, sir.
But if we can't reach you, we being figuratively, then we will look and see who your legal counsel is on your authorizations. And that can get costly if they get involved.
That's another very good point. That phone number that is on the LMS should be answered by a live person at all times. Lark is not a happy camper if he calls your station and all he gets is voicemail. You need to let the commission know. I mean, this is something that I'm going to guess a large number of stations do not pass muster on. They fail. Because if you look at the phone number or even the email address many times that's listed, you can't get to anybody that's live. You can,
I could probably, and I won't, but give several examples because I spend a lot of time in in the FCC database just because it's part of my job. Somebody will call and I want to know what their TPO is, what their configuration is before I call them back. So I use it a lot for prep work, but I can tell you that there are a pile of times when I'll go in there and either I'll know that the station is LMA'd to somebody else, but it's not shown in there, or I'll know the station's been sold and they just never bother filing the ownership. And it's like, these are not inconsequential things.
No, no, and the fines can be pretty stiff. You see this if the tower itself has been sold, perhaps along with the station or not with the station, and there's a problem. And
Or my all-time favorite, I'm always looking up antenna or tower coordinates to figure out how to get to a site, and then I'll go into the FCC's got a really cool little convert DMS to decimal degrees app on their website. So I'll go to that, convert to decimal, plug that into Google Maps, remembering I got to use NAT 27 instead of 83, and discover that there is absolutely no tower anywhere near those coordinates. Looking at the satellite view,
Really,
there's a
really,
pile of them.
really quick comment. So, hypothetically, a farmer could buy a large piece of land for the land. Hypothetically, there could be some broadcast towers on that. And that farmer does not know anything about changing ASR information. And hypothetically, what we might do is reach out to any older broadcast engineer in the area who knows people. This hypothetically is happening a lot these days because AM stations are selling their land and farmers are buying it who don't use the internet as much as we do. Just something to think about, and not maybe for your site, but be available if someone needs your help, because that ends up being the quickest solution is finding an old timer. Because, oh yeah, I know this or that. The last go around, I think it was Stephen Lockwood, who put me on to the right guy who was in his 80s, who wasn't involved, but was extremely helpful. This is where I tell people I'd love to see people with gray hair or no hair.
I
Yep.
think it was Kevin Kidd in the South who told us a story a couple of years ago about a station that changed hands, and they called him in and he says, "Well, where's your transmitter?" "We don't know." Literally nobody in the building knew.
Mm-hmm.
And they called the sheriff's office and they found themselves out on a farm, which had been sold or whatever, had been sitting there for so long that the farmer actually knocked down the building and the transmitter literally was sitting there with a tarp over it.
Wouldn't surprise me a bit. And yeah, I mean, I see that Mike, Harold, and Mark all made comments about printed paperboard and passes or emergency procedures manual. I love, and but something printed. If it's stored online, it's only as reliable as A, the network connection, or B, the lack of malware. Um,
Now,
so
this brings up a good point. If you have been there for a while and maybe your station was located by the old quad maps and and the and the actual coordinates were put down, you may not be where they are, and it really is worth your attention. I don't know, is Google Maps close enough to go on there, or Google Earth, and check to see where your coordinates are?
Google Earth will get you within the dither factor, so about 30 feet. Um, that's pretty good when you're using. Now I don't know Google Earth. I usually use satellite view on maps, but same concept. And I have had a couple of owners call me asking for quotes, and they always go by ERP, which is great. But it's like, hey, I need a 100 kilowatt transmitter. No, I'm almost 100% certain you do not. What's your transmitter run? Well, I don't know. Well, where is it? Well, I don't know. Well, just hang on, and you go look up the coordinates and go look at the tower, and then hit Street View and count the bays and work it backwards from there. But yeah, the amount of times that the tribal knowledge, what Lark's talking about, the gray hair guys and the bald guys,
Mhm.
the
Wait a minute,
tribal
who are you
knowledge has
talking
gone
about?
away. Yeah, like that. Hey, you got gray and bald all at the same time, covered both ways.
And I
But
thought you were my friend.
I'm still buying the lasagna.
All right.
But anyway, yeah, I mean the amount of times the tribal knowledge has gone away without any record of it, and nobody knows anymore what the TPO is supposed to be.
It could
And
be anything.
that's
It could even be something as simple as a monitoring point. I
yeah.
got called by a station that could not find their monitoring point. Couldn't find it. Well, it turned out they hadn't been there in years, but
Mhm.
the original monitor point was called mailbox and abandoned Jeep trail.
Yeah,
Well, if you can't find the tower, it's probably stolen.
Is
that
that in
only
your
happens in
inventory?
Alabama.
Oh,
We've got a monitor point that's on the shoulder of the interstate
Mm.
that has been re that's been repaved a few times.
Well, we have
Yeah.
lots of stories over the years of folks following up on radials and finding themselves on a military post or
On
uh,
a lake.
so yeah, in a lake.
Yeah.
It's fairly inaccessible, and there are procedures to redefine your monitor point, but you have to know where they are. You have to be out there. You have to check them out, and if a monitor point goes bad because a shopping center suddenly got put there, it's your responsibility to find that, redo it, do a partial proof on that radio, and get it fixed. But this all goes back to the paperwork and again, if somebody comes in while you're out of town and they're asked the question, why is this here or where is that, and they can't find it, that's not going to be good.
Yeah, more and more, I am a big fan when you talk monitor points. I like MOM more and more as I
A lot of
get
people do.
exposed to it. But that's a whole different conversation too. It is and it isn't, because how do you back up your monitoring system?
Exactly. To go out and check it, you should periodically. Um, thinking about that aspect of the paperwork and checking your systems. Now, um, Jeff, let's move to the equipment for a second or more. Uh, so many places have one transmitter because Nautels are so reliable. They never break down.
I hope I wasn't on the screen when I did that little eye roll, but and not that they're not. It's that any transmitter's as reliable as the site you put it in.
So
But
what do you think? Are you one of these people that recommends N+1 of a lower power level just to keep something going? Or what do you often suggest to people?
so, I mean, that's going to be determined more by your budget than anything else. But but no, the one thing I get on about, like we've got at our station, we're lucky. We've got a 1.5 kilowatt, well, 1.4K TPO, and I've got two transmitters that'll both hit that power. So, now being located 45 minutes from the factory and being the dedicated beta site, that helps. But yeah, an example, when we get ice, I will have to, because my antenna doesn't like ice, I'll drop power to 75 watts from 1400. And at 75 watts, I'm still covering my city of license. Obviously, I don't cover anything outside of that community, but at least I'm hitting the license area. So that's, I think, the big thing. Figure out what power you need to cover the most critical part of your coverage area. And that's what power your backup needs to be. Now, whether you use one portable transmitter to cover all your stations or whether you use dedicated ones. I always tell people if you put a new transmitter in and you've still got physical room to leave the old transmitter there, assuming it wasn't totally burnt to pieces, then don't take the old one out if it's working. Leave it in place and as a working backup.
You may well need it at some point.
Oh, you absolutely will need it at some point, and I don't care whose logo's on the front of the new box.
Probably
If current goes through it, current will stop going through it at some point.
at the worst possible time.
Oh,
Harold,
guaranteed. It'll be, at 3 p.m. on a Friday of a long weekend. Like, oh, what's tomorrow? I guess it'd be 3 p.m. today for this scenario, but yeah.
I can remember my early days in FM broadcasting, which goes back to 1954. And nobody knew what FM was back in those days, and our audience was so small. And we had a 10 kilowatt GE transmitter. When it broke down, I always figured we're saving money now that we're off the air for a while.
I worked with Charles Cooper Sr. at the site he and his wife owned in Gulfport, Mississippi. And he was telling me they built that station in 1951, and it was 6 years before they could get a local dealership to install an FM radio in a car. So that's what he said. For 6 years, we were broadcasting to nobody.
Yeah, I think I probably had one of the first FM radios in a car because I took a little Granco table model radio and bolted it into the car and then stole B plus out of the car radio to run it and had FM in the car, which then I discovered multipath and all that.
I don't know. I'm really uncomfortable with anything but a full power spare. You know, the 50s that I've worked with and for all had full power backups.
well, you're talking about being in the big city and the building penetration being very important. But today, the majority of listening seems to be in cars, and you don't need quite as much power to reach the cars. It's height more than power.
Yeah, and that's what I say. I mean, I know that I can cover my area with 100 watts if I need to. So if we ended up where the VS1 finally got aged out, then I would probably look at a 150 or a 250 for a backup. I wouldn't necessarily go full power. But it's again going to be situational.
Ron posted in YouTube a comment which brings me back to something that I half said and didn't finally say. He says, common point or the control point has to be a physical location. Can't be your cell phone. Has to be a physical location. Could be the transmitter. Now, I don't know if Lark's going to want to talk about that, but if the CO letter is posted at the transmitter, that's okay, even if the transmitter is the top of the mountain and it takes a day to get there. Harold, your hand's up again.
Yeah. First off, I agree on keeping old transmitter as backup. That's a very inexpensive way of having a backup transmitter. On FMs, I also like a backup antenna. Ideally, we would have a spare radio station at the site and, just switch over to it. No matter what's wrong, you're off the air, switch over to the other one. And then on a control point, I am looking at 731350H. Whenever a transmission control point is established at a location other than the main studio or transmitter, of course, main studio doesn't exist anymore, a letter of notification of that location must be sent to the FCC via a change of control point notice in LMS within 3 days of the initial use of that point. The letter should include a list of all control points in use for clarity. This notification is not required if responsible station personnel can be contacted at the transmitter or studio site during hours of operation. Also, you mentioned the chief operator declaration. I'm not sure that needs to be posted. I'll have to look. I think it just has to be in quote station files, but I'll look that one up next.
Well,
So Harold, first of all, I want a tip of the hat to you because I have followed you for 100 years and enjoyed looking at your, notes, following the regulations. But I think it's worth mentioning that we should all take a deep breath and a moment of silence to ponder what the regulations are going to look like a year from now. And I'll just leave it at that.
I'll watch for the NPRM.
We like to call it triple D.
yep, yep.
Well, there's mention of having a totally separate site. WCBS TV was very happy, even though it was a mistake, to have a separate site at 9/11.
That was Dennis Christensen's point here. 9/11 proved that importance.
Yes.
And for those of you that don't know, when all the FMs and TVs in New York were on the World Trade Center, which collapsed in and of itself, WCBS radio or TV, sorry, was still with the old site at the Empire State Building. And all they had to do is turn it on.
Yes, but the site was supposed to have been removed.
That's
But
the story.
Yeah. And yet someone probably got fired. And then it turned out to be a saving grace.
Yeah.
I know my WPIX FM was on the World Trade,
Mhm.
and it came down.
Harold mentions a spare antenna, and a lot of stations I know today make a mutual pact with another station in the market to put a single bay up or something on the other guy's tower in exchange for them hosting a single bay. And therefore you have that opportunity, whether you have that N+1 transmitter or you have a full backup, you do have a second site, whether it be for storm damage or something goes wrong, tower climber needs it to be lowered in power or off for a period of time. Having that second location is very helpful.
Yeah, I mean, by the same token, you can put a short stick with a 1 bay broadband antenna up at the studio and run a 1 kilowatt into that, all frequency agile. So pick the signal that's off, feed the audio to it, and away you go.
I've seen
Didn't
stations
pretty.
do that.
But what's that?
I've seen stations do that, and then other
Yep.
stations are too far out of the center of their city, or the city that they want to reach. They may be a rim shot. And
Right. And
that
yeah,
doesn't work.
again, like I said before, it is very much going to be situational.
I've heard of control points being a Circle K, and that's where in the old days of the public file being on
I've got
site.
one customer, they've got like one of those little RV generators, little 3 or 5 kilowatt RV generator, super quiet, and a Wilbert mast and a decommissioned remote van with a transmitter in it. I mean, they can put a signal on the air wherever they happen to be able to park the van.
We did not even talk about generators. That's a good point. Now, there's a Tiger team, I think iHeart has, among others, that if there is a disaster, they can just drive right on down. Transmitters, antennas, generator, all together.
Yep. And I mean, again, that's going to be situational, determined by your size and your budget. But having some method of creating backup power is more and more, and you can make the argument, and you can do the math for it. You can calculate how often you're off air because of power failures in an average year, and then determine, what it costs you per minute to be off air, and decide whether there's a budget for standby generator on a regular basis. But even beyond that, I mean, you can get a 9 kilowatt generator. I mean, the one out behind my house here was under $1,000 Canadian. So what's that? A nickel 95 US? No, it's about $650 at current exchange, I believe. But yeah, I mean, $650 for a relatively portable 9 kilowatt generator that'll put a 2 kilowatt transmitter on the air plus some backup audio sources, plus, plus, plus. So,
Yeah,
you know,
we've-
there are quite a few options for
Yeah.
under a couple thousand.
We've reached the point of solar panels, and batteries could do that too.
Yep. Oh yeah. I've got
Park your
one or
Tesla.
two. Well, hey, I've got a customer running a 10 kilowatt TPO with a solar powered site, no hydro.
Yeah. And if there's a problem, you drive your Tesla up and hook it in.
How do I run
So
WOR on a battery?
you what?
How do I run WOR on a battery?
Now that would be a challenge. Of course, the WOR running MDCL is only drawing about 50 kilowatts. It would have to be a pretty big battery. We're not talking double A's here. But and it's funny because Barry, when you talked about hooking the Tesla up and smirked, one of the reasons I am looking at a Silverado EV for my next vehicle is because it fits with my driving amount. And if I put solar panels on the roof of the house, I can charge both the truck and without running it off the grid at all. And the truck is configured so that it can be plugged back into the battery bank to drive the house for up to a week on a power outage.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, for me, that makes perfect sense. Now I'm not hauling trailers and I don't need to go 400 or 500 miles in a trip. So that would work for me. For a lot of people, it wouldn't. Again, it's situational.
Now, KGO in San Francisco, some years back, they actually put together a package with the local utility, and there were 3 huge solar panels put up, presumably to drive the station. Now, I don't know if it achieved 50 kilowatts all the time, but I do know that they got a large part of that. And there's also on the web, and I think it's a 10, which is Radio Caroline in England, and you can go on their website and you can see how much power their system is generating at any given time.
Yep. Now, and a lot of folks look at you know, if we happen to generate more than we consume, then we can sell it back to the power company. The caveat, like here, the power company caught on to that real fast and said, "Oh no, 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 no! Tell you what, if we're being forced to buy it back from you, we're buying it at wholesale. But if we get to sell it to you, we'll sell it to you at retail. So what you get back is a whole lot less than what you'd think in some cases."
Now, both the Silverado and the Ford Lightning have outlets.
Yes.
Harold?
Yeah, I'll say that the Silverado EV was the because I'm a Chev guy at the moment anyway, and but it is very much configured to be able to backfeed your house. I mean, I'm kind of cautious about that. It would still go through a transfer switch, but yeah,
It depends on the location. There are places now where they will not accept your solar as a discount. Others will.
Right.
Here in Tucson, if you have the solar panel from the electric company and the main power goes off, you'll love this. You don't get anything. You go dark. The solar feeds in when it's there during the day.
Right.
But if the Tucson Electric goes down, you're done.
That seems to defeat the purpose of having it to me. So yeah, I would have to rethink that whole scenario.
Harold.
But
Yeah,
Harold?
a couple of things. Let's see. So we have grid tied solar here, and humidity went up here, so we finally had to turn on our air conditioner instead of our swamp cooler. So looking right now, our air conditioner is taking 2.079 kilowatts, and our solar output is 2.449 kilowatts. So our total grid load right now is 810 watts. So that's good. We have net energy billing. So they just, you know, subtract what we put back into the grid from what we pull from the grid and bill us based on that. And I you know, although it would be to my disadvantage, I do think that them buying back at wholesale kind of makes sense. Probably they should probably not be forced to pay inflated rates. The thing of the solar shutting down when the power goes out is, of course, a safety issue for their line people. you could probably set up a transfer switch and so on
Right.
to get around that.
Yeah,
But
like we do with generators now, just to
yeah,
isolate you from the grid.
I think though that here, I don't know, it's very rare for our power to go out. And in fact, I'm really surprised with the amount of lightning here that it does pretty well.
Yeah.
Finally, I did look up 73.1870, and designation of chief operator must be in writing agreements. Let's see. With chief operators serving on a contract basis must be in writing with a copy in the station files. So there was a reference to station files. I'm trying to see where the designation is. I have a feeling it's also in station files. One thing that's interesting though is
In the alternate, Harold, also
yeah.
the alternate CO.
Let's see. Well, one thing I was going to mention also is the employee versus contractor. Chief operator of an AM using directional or operating with a power of greater than 10 kilowatts authorized power. Now that's interesting. Is that ERP or TPO? Or a TV station is to be an employee, where others can be a contractor. Let's see,
Harold,
designation must be.
there's a question here on the YouTube from Jeremy, and he says, if you have your license and renewal along with a sign stating the chief engineer and assistant laminated and taped to the wall next to the transmitter rack sufficient, along with a copy of the most recent EAS handbook. Is that all that's needed?
I suspect so. They keep referring to station records. So if you can produce it, I suspect that is okay. Again, I'm just going by what I'm reading in the rules, which is certainly subject to interpretation.
But again, you have to notify the commission that that is the place.
You have to notify the commission of a new control point within 3 days. I don't know that you need to notify them where the records are.
Well, I believe the records we're talking about need to be at the control point.
It just says in the station records here. I'll look further, but I'll go back to mute here and listening. Thank you.
Or as was just pointed out, DDD, and we may we may find the control point for everybody in Chicago.
There is also, of course, unattended operation, in which case there is no control point, and that is legal, either based on automated equipment or stable equipment that will keep you within tolerance.
Oh, Jeremy, Dennis mentions EAS logs. They've got to be there.
Mm-hmm. That's part of the station log, and I believe it just has to be produced upon request. I'm not sure that there is a location requirement.
Well, let's just say that you're not going to have someone waiting for several hours for it to be produced.
Probably true. What do you think of this employee versus contractor thing? Are people complying with that? And does that power mean TPO or ERP? I'll throw one more thing in here. As far as a station contact, as I recall, Part 74 requires a sign on translators with contact information. I suggested that in some comments to the FCC, and they said we will continue to rely on informal means of contact.
I think the key is, and was stated earlier, that anytime a station is in operation, they must be reachable. As to the contract engineer or the power levels, it used to be that we had the first phone involved. The first phone went away, the third phone went away, and then the rule was rewritten to be an employee. And I believe that we're talking about the power level for AM transmitter, and for FM, I would assume that it again, the power levels we're talking about AM, and FM didn't have that first phone requirement. Unless you've got it written down there and you're going to correct me, which would be fine.
Yeah, I'm looking at it again. It does say authorized power, so that's probably going to be common point power on a directional AM, antenna power on non-directional, and ERP on an FM. It's going to be my guess as to what authorized power is.
Yeah.
But are people serving as chief operator on a contract basis and for higher power stations and perhaps not aware of that rule?
Oh, I'm sure there are.
Well, that kind of ties into, like, even though the main studio rule is eliminated, the station still needs to maintain a phone number or some means of being contacted on a, how did they word it? Regular basis or somewhere. I don't know the exact wording. I've got the documentation open. I just don't have time to read it. Go figure, 45 pages to say we're eliminating the main studio rule.
Well, again, I come back to the requirement being in the LMS. Problem becomes, what happens if there's somebody who calls that number and nobody answers or it goes to voicemail? If it's a listener, no problem. If it's your friendly neighborhood inspector, you might have an issue.
And nobody knows the password to get into LMS.
Well, you can get the public part of it. You can get the contact part of it there. And of course, the FCC can get into it. They have the magic key.
Right, but for updating.
Well, they wouldn't update it for you. You have to, if you are the one to update it and you don't have the password. I just went through this with a particular station where they fired their GM and the new guy comes in and he can't access the LMS. Had to go through, and there is a way that you can do this, and it involves contacting the commission, and it'll all work out. It also works out if you have more than one person who knows that password and is authorized to connect. Well, Jeff, we could have gone in many directions.
Hey, it's been fun this way.
We could have talked about what do you have to have at the site, water, first aid kit, can of beer or two or whatever.
Cans, no, bottles all the way.
But
yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that, like I've said over and over, it's going to vary from one station and one situation to another. But having a plan, and that comes back to I had to scroll up because I forget who Mike mentioned the emergency procedures manual. Like I said, with us, it's a whiteboard that says if this, then this. But however you do it, there needs to be some sort of documentation so everybody knows what to do when stuff goes sideways, not just that one person with all the knowledge in their head.